in the same week is a rough look. And let me be clear on something. The leak says nothing that should make you trust Claude code less at all. The underlying model is unaffected. No customer data was exposed. No AI systems were compromised. This is a packaging mistake on a developer CLI. But it does tell you something important. Even the most sophisticated AI companies in the world are making basic operational errors right now. And why is that? It's because the pace is insane, right? They're building faster than their own internal processes can keep up with. Source maps shouldn't ship in production packages.
But scared. Anthropic loves to enact DMCA takedowns, which they have already done on every single GitHub mirror that they have found that contains the source code from their leaked source map file. Again, they did this. And you can see all of the repos that they
by OpenAI was already open source. What we're actually here to talk about is Claude Code, because Claude Code isn't open source. Anthropic has historically been not great about how they've handled the source code for Claude Code. They've been very strict trying to keep it private. Even though there is a GitHub repo for Claude Code, it does not include Claude Code itself. It just includes plugins and skills and a few other random things. They've been protecting Claude Code for a while, referring to it as their secret sauce. But they've also been using Claude Code to build Claude.
Making their daily updates to Claude Code. There was a small mistake that was made, which was basically that they accidentally included site maps in their project. And I'll speak a little bit about what that actually means. But the genie was out of the bottle, and we know how the internet works. Once something is out there, it's kind of hard to take it back. And Anthropic is doing their best, because if you try to download the code, it is not available. And that's been happening, and it's been getting fixed. So this is hosted on Cloudflare, so I don't know exactly what's going on there. I don't know if it's a Cloudflare thing or if this person is just re-uploading it every time. But I was able to download the source code, and I think there's a ton of consequences of this. I think there's a lot of reasons why this actually
be quite aggressive with their DMCA takedowns. But here's the funny thing. Somebody already converted all of the Claude Code codebase over to Python, which makes it completely legal to have. Just it having been rewritten makes it copyright unenforceable. And already people are running Claude Code locally. Here is why this is such a big deal. First,
with limited external testing. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Buried inside that same leaked draft is a warning from Anthropic itself. The document suggests that Claude Mythos could significantly outpace every existing AI system in identifying and exploiting software vulnerabilities. The draft reportedly describes the model as far ahead of any other AI model in cyber capabilities. And it warns the system could enable large-scale cyber attacks if misused. And this concern is not theoretical. Anthropic has previously disclosed that threat actors have already attempted to use its existing models for malicious purposes. In one identified campaign, attackers used AI tools to target dozens of organizations simultaneously, including financial institutions and government agencies. The activity was eventually halted, but it demonstrated clearly and chillingly how quickly AI tools can be weaponized at scale. We will continue to track this story, but do let us know your thoughts.
Here are the things that we don't know, right? So we don't know any specific benchmark numbers. I mean, they're saying it's dramatically better in coding and similar tasks. They're saying it's the most capable model they've built to date. They're saying it's a step change in performance. I mean, these are very big words that are used to describe how big of a leap this new model is. We also don't know any of the timeline for release. So right now they're saying they're testing it with a small group of trusted customers, but they're also saying that they're trying to make it more efficient. And so maybe they'll release something in the future if they manage to bring the cost down. Again, right now it seems like it might be prohibitively expensive from actually being run by most people. And also that capybara thing, there was two versions of the blog. One was called Mythos, one was called Capybara. That might have been an internal code name for this model. Either that or a separate model, we're not 100% sure. And we also don't know how it compares to OpenAI's Spud, right? That's another model that's making a lot of kind of news. OpenAI also said that it's finished training that model, I think a few days ago, and that it's going to be dramatically accelerating the economy. Or maybe they didn't say dramatically, but it will accelerate the economy. So both of those things seem like a step change in the model's abilities. And of course, we don't know the pricing. We don't know the context window, whether it has extended reasoning, thinking mode. No details like that have been provided. So we have OpenAI's Spud landing in a few weeks. We have Mythos slowly being rolled out to a few select people and maybe in the future to a wider range of people. But again, it sounds like it's going to be like you're going to have to pay extra or be on some extra high tier. Maybe they'll add $1,000 a month tier. Keep in mind, Anthropic is eyeing an IPO maybe as early as the fourth quarter of 2026. And OpenAI is also trying to do an IPO. So certainly getting a few more higher priced tiers right.
With the biggest news of the week, which was the fact that Anthropic's Claude code was actually leaked onto the internet. I believe this is the original source of the discovery here, Fried Rice over on X. Claude code source code has been leaked via a map file in their NPM registry. And then they actually shared a link to where you can download the source of Claude code. Now, Anthropic's a company that typically keeps what they're doing pretty close to their chest. But now that this was leaked, essentially people are out there sort of iterating off of it and treating it like open source and making their own versions of it. Anthropic is sort of going and trying to DMCA takedown as much as possible because this spread across GitHub like crazy. But I think the most interesting thing to come out of this leak,
the clock 24/7. There's this project called Paperclip. Maybe you've seen it because it just blew up. It got 30,000 GitHub stars in the last 3 weeks. And it's an open source project that's building the orchestration layer for exactly that, hiring a team of AI agents. So I sat down with Dota, he's the creator, and it's one of the
But here's what's interesting. OMC ships with 5 pre-built agent personas baked into default scaffold, and most developers never realize they'd be customized.
Running in the background. I never recommend people to start from there. Start with one agent and make your way up by talking to your agent. Like, that's the best thing that OpenClaw has done. So you really don't need to be a technical expert, or you don't need to be a coding ninja to like run these agents, deploy them, or make multiple agents out of it. So I started with this main agent. I named her after Monica because Monica is known to run a tight ship. She handles the operation, all those things very well. And I started talking to Monica. So like, here's tip 1. So when you are starting with
So this is
OpenClaw,
tip number 1 of your 5 tips.
Yes. When people start with OpenClaw, when people start with their first agent, because of all the hype that's created and that brings people into this, people think, okay, installing is the only thing I need, and then I just start chatting with my agent, and the agent can do whatever I want. That's not how it works. So I've seen people operating in like 2 extremes. Some people just like directly get in without giving any context. So you really need to tell your agent about yourself, what you want it to do. Think of it like onboarding a real employee or an intern. So you do not onboard them by not telling them anything. You don't onboard them by telling them nothing. Also, you don't just like bombard them with all the company information on day one. So you don't just like dump files and files of content. You don't just give them like, here are like 10 folders, figure this out yourself. So people are operating in 2 extremes, and both of them end up in a disappointed shape or form. And then they're like, oh, this OpenClaw thing, it was so hyped up and it is not working. It's like, either you don't give it any context, or you're just dumping it with a lot of context. Because at the end of it, it's the model which has limitations. If you dump it with a lot of context, it will do a context plot. If you don't tell them anything, it will just give you a generalist result. So you have to be very
example
smart.
of this. Good context to give it, and then overwhelming it.
Good context will be just like how you onboard intern. You would tell them who you are, what the company is, what the company does. You point them towards the right links. You tell them specifically, this is your job. This is what I want you to do. Just like Jason, you were mentoring, right? At the start.
Like onboarding an employee.
Yeah, you were very specific. Lon, I want you to do this. And Jacob, I want you to do that. So you need to be very specific. You can't just say, Jason, okay, Lon, Jason, figure out what went wrong and just do everything yourself. You were very specific in your direction. So you need to have that kind of direction, and that's the right context.
Have you done that, by the way, Lon, on yours, on Gaff? Have you done that?
Yes, in fact, we had another guest on, Jordy Coltman. You remember this was during the very early days of OpenClaw, and his recommendation was you have your agent interview you and then base its sole MD file on that interview. So I actually had a whole 20-minute conversation with Gaff where I explained the show and how I'm going to use him and what kind of other tools I'm using. And that really informed our whole relationship moving forward to there. So yeah, I think this is...
First, let's talk about the agents. With Agency Agents, it went viral a few weeks ago. 64,000 stars. It's a library of 147 plus pre-built AI specialist personas. Each one a markdown file with a complete expert identity. Their specialty, their mental model, the way they approach problems. The whole library is organized exactly like a company org chart, and it's open source. Somebody built this, and now you can deploy it. Next up for the frame
people, but they realize how powerful OpenClaw can be. But here's the thing, one agent doing every single thing is similar to hiring one person to be your copywriter, your developer, researcher, project manager, and social media person, all of that. You see, every AI agent has something called a context window. You can think of this like a big whiteboard. You can write a lot of things on the whiteboard, but once it's full, you're basically erasing old stuff to fit in the new stuff, or you're simply not remembering the old stuff because the board's too big. So as a result, your agent begins to forget the small details. It makes mistakes and so on. And this is the pain point we're going to solve today by getting you your first AI agent team. This multi-agent setup is something that I believe...
I've been there, and it is just soul-crushing. This is where MCP, the Model Context Protocol, steps in. Okay, let's unpack this. Think of MCP like a universal library card for the AI. Right. Because instead of applying for a new, totally different library card at the Notion branch, and then, driving over to get a separate card for the PostgreSQL branch and another for the Mailgun branch.
It's just too much.
The agent just shows its one standard MCP card and gets instant access to read the latest data or take action.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. MCP completely eliminates the custom integration overhead on your end. The various servers advertise their tools, and your agent automatically discovers them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the true brilliance here is the maintenance aspect. Because these MCP servers are maintained by the teams who actually built those original systems like Notion or PostgreSQL, your agent always gets the latest correct tool definition.
So I don't have to change anything.
Exactly. You don't have to update a single line of your own integration.
Releases, and we miss some of the larger changes that are happening. So what I am seeing is that the 2010s era triangle of product and engineering and design is starting to blur together. We've talked about that. But the thing we haven't talked about that I've seen discussed only rarely, because I think it's a nuanced topic that tends to sort of run away into the job loss debate, we don't talk about the fact that the product design engineering triangle often did not work well in practice. And I say that as someone who lived it, right? And I would say of the product design engineering triangles I was a part of, the vast majority were not seamless. We had issues where engineering was the break and said you couldn't build this. We had issues where design was slow and said, I need some more time to push pixels. We had issues where product, namely me, liked to go fast and bias for action, and everyone else was worried about that. But the point is this, in all of those cases, we were gated by the ability to sequentially get pixels on the page and then later find out if it was buildable. Best circumstances I found, the best teamwork angles I found in that 2010s era world was when you could co-locate, and it was the 2010s ideal, right? The designer would sit with the engineer, with product, we would all huddle around a screen and we would mess with stuff together and we would see what worked. The beauty of that is that even though that was rare in the 2010s, this kind of tool with the command line is making that more possible for everybody today. So in the past, you had to depend on the right people being in the room and having some degree of, frankly, role blurring, even though we didn't talk about it that way. The designer needed to understand a bit of how JavaScript worked. The engineer needed to understand a little bit about how you put polish on the front end. And product needed to be able to sit there and sort of put the two together and look at the offer and the customer. Well, now at the command line, you can actually invoke something that is by definition buildable, because that's how this works. If it's not buildable, Claude Code can't touch it. And also, you can start to bring in multiple options for design iteration very quickly. And that was always one of the things we struggled with. It's the idea that design takes time. Designing something in a polished way takes more time. If you want to get through a variety of iterations, design is something that you can do from the command line now and quickly get through them. Now, I am here to tell you, if you want extraordinary polish, you will still need to have a designer hand finish this stuff. But so often right now, what the designer needs to do is just put together from a design library the next release. Like if you wonder, how are designers at Anthropic doing this? How are designers at OpenAI doing this? They are in the code. They are working from the command line. They are working to code something up, and they're working from the library of components they have, and they're putting it together in a way that's very rapid so they don't slow the team down. That is command line design thinking, and it applies to the video space as much as it applies to creative. So I don't see high-class designers leaving the room here. I think that AI replaces designers' narrative is cheap and it's distracting. I see high-class designers, and really I've talked to them, sitting at the command line. I see them sitting with engineering and product, pushing through ideas into code in real time. And instead of the whole table wondering whether the design is buildable, it's just right there. It's prototyped, it's exportable, it goes right to the code base. I'm really bullish on this, and it's not because it replaces designers, it's because it abstracts away the part of design that was never the point. The point was always the experience for the customer, the feeling, the flow, the moment when a user thinks, this is what I needed. That judgment, you can't automate that away. It gets amplified because now the person who has it can iterate at the speed of language instead of at the speed of Figma. What shipped in the last few weeks is the beginning of that shift.
MCP is kind of like an all or nothing game. You get the MCP or you don't get the MCP. And what that means is in systems that are extremely sensitive to bloat, so in the case of like LLM calls and context windows, you basically have a zero-sum choice. You either use all the features or none of them. And that's just not how we do software.
So this is like kind of how I model this, is like you have this long tail of tools that you want to let users bring in their, you know, whatever it is. But like the thing is that you have a high percentage of users, and like over time you can add first class things for all, right? If someone, if there's some MCP that starts becoming really popular and lots of people are using it, then that's your signal to go pull, migrate it and build a first class integration. I'm not gonna call it lazy, but if you want.
And here is an expert which just works with you to get it done. It completely removes the initial learning curve. So you can get a fully working agent in less than 2 minutes. Just enter the prompt in the coding agent and you get it there. So without further ado, Chris, why don't we spin up our IDE and show them how easy and how quick it is to build their first agent?
Yeah, that's a great idea. And so we can probably do it faster than it took me to explain what those methods were, right? This stuff is really cool and cutting edge. So if I open up anti-gravity, I'll just show really quickly what this step looks like. So you can install skills or you can enable the docs MCP server. They're kind of two different methods of doing kind of the same thing. And so in my anti-gravity config, if I go to the settings, MCP servers, and I click this manage MCP servers button, there is a way that you can view the raw config, and that 16-line config is exactly what we have in our docs here. And all it's really doing is saying, hey, I'm going to give you an MCP server, and I'm going to point you to the latest and greatest ADK docs, right? So I did that. I've enabled that, and you can see I have two new tools now, list doc sources and fetch docs. So now what I can do is I can pull up a new agent on the side here. Let's go back to the agent, and I can plug in a prompt and say, hey, let's create a multi-agent system on our desktop. We want to use ADK Python, and I want a root agent that delegates to two sub-agents, one that generates a short summary and another that translates that summary into Spanish. Each agent should use Gemini 3 Flash Preview, and I told it to kind of use the project structure that ADK has defined. So with that prompt, I can send that to my coding agent in anti-gravity, and it is now going to pull those docs tools, and it's going to make a couple of queries. So it knows it needs to query about multi-agent setups. It knows that it needs to look up documentation for basically how do I make a root agent with sub-agents. And so this is sort of like the agent reading all of those docs for me. And then at some point, it's going to spit back a plan, and I can read through that plan and make sure that's what we want, and we'll code our agent. And so one thing I'll mention too, while this is running and planning, is Gemini 3 models have come out recently, right? So we have Gemini 3.1 Pro, Gemini 3.1 Flash Lite, and then Gemini 3 Flash. And so ADK works with all of these, right? So out of the box. So you don't have to do any special tweaks or tuning or anything. What I like to do personally when I'm developing, like, especially really complex agents, is I like to start with the pro models and really see what the agent is capable of. And then later on, I can take some of those sub-agents and kind of optimize and say, hey, this translation step, like maybe I can convert that to flashlight and start kind of optimizing later on. But just so you know, like Shubham said, yeah, you can plug into Gemini 3 models today, or you can plug into other models. We have a bunch of pages on like Ollama. This thing is, we've really designed ADK to be open and let you work how you want to. And so, yeah, so our coding agent has an implementation plan, and it says, hey, we're going to make a summarizer agent, a translator agent, a root agent, and we've approved that plan, and it's going to start coding up. So there's our init, our end, and our agent.py. And so it's writing all this code for me, and the main thing is it's adhering to all of the like best practices that are in the documentation. So let's see, let's accept some of these edits, and so we can see. I'm going to run this and see what we have. So we have a summarizer agent, we have a translator agent with Gemini 3 Flash Preview, and then we have a root agent coordinator. And so this all should work. And let us go to our terminal. I'm going
to just come in here and write my own prompt to have Copilot scaffold an agent for me based on my requirements. So in this case, I want to build a multi-agent workflow that can write a blog post, but also have a reviewer to score the content, right? So we only publish the blog post if it's good, and it will reject the blog post it's not great. So it's going to give me back a score. If it's greater than 75, then we'll save content in the Word doc. Otherwise, don't publish. So again, just like how I did earlier to ask it for model recommendation, I can just kick it off with Copilot. It's going to take a few seconds to get ADA processed. Just for time's sake, I'm going to switch over to another VS Code instance where I have done this earlier. So here's the exact prompt I sent to Copilot. Again, Copilot searches for relevant skills to learn about how to best orchestrate a multi-agent workflow. In this case, it's reading the Foundry skill file and learn about the new Microsoft Agent Framework for orchestrating this multi-agent workflow for me. So it did a bunch of thinking and generated a full project with these files. If we look at this app.py file, which is the key script that defines my workflow, it is using the workflow builder from the Microsoft Agent Framework, which provides a really easy way to orchestrate multi-agent workflows. And down here, you see all the prompts here, and I put a breakpoint. Normally, I would just press F5 to start running, and I can expect to hit my breakpoint. And in here, in this project that Copilot generated, it actually did include these VS Code configuration files for launching and tasks as well. So I can just press F5 without having to do any configurations myself. So you see here, we are already in the debugging session. One thing we did in the AI toolkit is to provide this piece of UI that can work great with the debugger in VS Code. So as you debug through your code, we give you some nice visuals on top of that to really help make the debugging experience a little bit better and easier. So on the left-hand side, you'll see this is what we call a workflow visualizer. Because the workflow we had in code was entirely composed using Python code and agent framework, there's nothing visual about it. So it's really helpful to be able to see how these agents are composed together. And in this case, I have three. There's a blog post drafter, and then it drafts the blog post, hands over to verifier to make sure all the content is grounded, and then eventually hand over to a reviewer to score the content. So on the right-hand side, we have this mini playground here that allows us to interact with our workflow. So let's say I want to ask my agent to draft a blog post for the latest VS Code release. And you see here on the left-hand side, this visualizer, it's not just a static view. This is actually being updated live. We get information about the object models from runtime and through the agent framework telemetry events. Then we compose this view, updates, and you can see it's spinning. The blog drafter is currently doing the work. It's reading, searching and reading the latest release notes and identify the top features and compose a blog post draft. And this agent inspector is many things all in one. In here, we see a mini playground, and we can also look at the input and output of each individual agent as it's running, so nothing yet, but we'll come back here, as well as individual events as those come through as well, and tool calling, which we'll see as this workflow moves a bit further along. With
that, I ended up coming across this infographic from a person called Ruben Hassid. He put together this infographic of Claude and what chat, co-work, and projects do. Now, I don't want to cover projects, I actually want to cover code instead, but we'll be covering chat, co-work, and code. Now, I think this does a good example of showing the differences between the three main functions of Claude and what you would specifically use them for. A lot of people seem to overcomplicate what you can use Claude for, but it is actually really simple, and I think it's quite easy. Once you start using Claude, it's quite easy to figure out what you want to use each feature for. So when you open up the Claude app, this is probably what you're going to see, something like this. You have three different options at the top. You have chat, you have co-work, and you have code. The chat functionality is simple. It's just chatting to the AI.
Gotta say, they did an amazing job with this release. Allow me to introduce the Qwen 3.6 Plus, a new agentic coding model with a 1 million context window, focused on becoming a highly capable agentic AI model for real-world tasks. This model brings stronger agentic coding, meaning it can handle full project repo-level problems, terminal tasks, and automation workflows, while also improving multimodal reasoning with a better understanding of images, documents, videos, and real-world scenarios. Overall, it's designed to be an all-in-one
background. It's like you have an observation buffer. It's looking at it. When it's ready, it'll insert it, but the conversation just keeps going. There's never a lull or a stop where you have to wait and you see that your agent is thinking, your agent's compressing information. It just happens transparently. And so observational memory has a stable context window. So that's one of the biggest difference between how observational memory composes your context versus retrieval is, typically in retrieval, the argument is, well, you have a lot less context because you're only going out and getting just the most important things. But the nice thing about observational memory is you can have more context around the conversation, but it's very cacheable. And if you're familiar at all with prompt caching, you know that it's like 8 to 10x cheaper if it's a cache prompt versus if it's a fresh prompt that the LLMs have to process. And essentially, like, just an example of how you can really
redundant duplicates. Second, a unified representation. Remember multimodal. So all memories, regardless of the modality, are represented in a very particular form, and they went with a multimodal atomic unit, what we call mouse, that separate here the lightweight metadata from the raw, or heavy raw data, from the pure data, enabling us, or the system, therefore, a fast search over compact metadata while we preserve the full content access here on demand. So this is also a kind of a file system, not really what we used here with Skill.
In this video, I'm going to be vibe coding with the newly released Qwen 3.6 Plus preview, which released yesterday inside of OpenRouter for free. That's right, you can send all of your data and your entire code base to China if you'd like today using this model inside of OpenRouter. You can see that it has a 1 million context, and they're obviously serving it for free. But if we look at Qwen 3.5 Plus, you can see the normal pricing of this model family is 26 cents per million on the input and $1.56 per million on the output. So this is an incredibly cheap model, emphasis on cheap. That's
today. And for today, what we're going to learn is we're going to learn how to ingest multimodal data. We're going to build a multi-agent pipeline to understand multimodal data. We also learn how to search in this multi-agent system with a graph knowledge base. And I was joined by my awesome...
We need to do this in a more meaningful and a more intelligent way. I think this is a real opportunity for especially those who are coming from the RL community might be looking at things like intrinsic objectives, intrinsic motivations, things like diversity and curiosity and empowerment, to actually learn how to generate data that is in a meaningful way, that is in a really meaningful subspace of the gigantic space of possibilities of states and actions. So I think that's probably the number one challenge. And the second challenge is that if you have a neural simulator that was perhaps trained on simulation data, pre-trained on simulation data, how do you actually fine-tune that on real-world data? Because in simulation, your inputs might be things like joint torques, and they might be things like contacts. Okay, in the real world, you might be able to get joint torques from your robot. Hopefully you can. But contacts, how do you do that? You need to perceive the world. You need to actually somehow extract contact information from the world. Or you need a strategy that is a robust enough training strategy that can actually not rely on that data and actually train on very, very heterogeneous mixtures of data, some from simulation and some from the real world. So I think that's where we need to take it next.
All right. If we can, I'd like to have some questions from you fellow scholars. Can we do that? Maggie? Okay, let's see if the situation improves, and I'm gonna.
There was one there.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's gonna be a microphone or not. Okay, just shout. That's fine too.
All right, I'll shout. I have so many questions about reinforcement learning versus pre-training. I'll save it for later. Do you think it's going to be more along the lines of stuff that all happens in context, or do you think for continual learning in the future we're going to have to actually update the weights of the model? So in context or just updating weights? What do you think?
Yeah, I can repeat the question. So the question is, what happens with continual learning? Does it have to be just like putting everything in context, basically, making prompt engineering more informed by, whatever happens during inference time, or do we update the model weights? I think both are on the table. In fact, I have done research of both flavors. And the benefit of updating weights is that you get so much more focused specialization of the model, really zoning in for that one hard task that seemed so hard to solve. So we have a recent paper called the TTT Discover that performs lightweight RL on top of already trained model. And when you use OSS GPT, the open source model, it wasn't able to do certain kinds of a task well enough, but when we train the model to learn from its own past mistakes this is what happens during inference time, we were able to really push or unlock the capabilities, hidden capabilities that were kind of there, but the model wasn't able to perform before. So I think there's an amazing future in this direction to really explore different ways of doing model update during test time. But one thorny thing is that you cannot really update model weight for everyone all the time. So there's some decisions to be made about how exactly to do this right in practice.
All right, if someone promises me a soup
before they do. The second layer is evaluation. Observability tells you what happened. Evaluation tells you if it was any good. Here are the three metrics that matter most. The first one is task completion rate. Keeping this short as well. Out of every 100 requests, how many actually get done successfully without a human stepping in? This is your North Star. Everything else is commentary. A second metric, guardrail violation rate. Guardrail violation rate. How often does your agent try to do something it shouldn't? Leak sensitive data, give medical advice it's not qualified to give. This number should really be tiny. If it isn't, you have a problem. And third, factual accuracy rate. When your agent states a fact, let's say a diagnosis code, a drug dosage, a policy number, Is it actually correct? In regulated industries, this is not negotiable. Let's take a look at the third layer, optimization.
An agent harness. But I want to touch on this disciplines we've been seeing, right? Context engineering. So context engineering, we've heard about it for, I think, a year now. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe a year and a half. It's great. We know a lot about it. We've spoken about it in different webinars. You can check our developer resource page to see the webinars where we've spoken about this. Then memory engineering, right? We have the team over in Oracle are championing the message around memory engineering and really creating memory engineers. We talk a lot about memory engineering in the course we did with deep learning AI, and we always talk about agent memory because that is what we're focused on. Then the industry itself is focused on harness engineering, and this is everything. If we look back at the architecture, harness engineering is essentially making this architecture as optimized as possible, making this diagram, making every component within this diagram as optimized and efficient as possible. So this is what harness engineering is. It doesn't have it incorporates thinking about the context, incorporates thinking about an external memory, thinking about traces, thinking about actual observability, thinking about sandbox environment, thinking about everything around the LLM that makes your agent actually successful. So these are the disciplines that we're seeing. There's some more slides
that are post-code, I'll say. There are three key questions that separate whether they're real from whether they're fake. Number one, does the agent have persistent memory, or does every session start from zero? Number two, does the agent produce artifacts that you can inspect, that you can edit, and that you can build upon? Or does it produce something that's more opaque than that, that's less clear as a deliverable? And number three, does the architecture let your context compound over time so you can get smarter as you use them? If I'm looking at what produces outcomes that improve, all three of those questions need to be a yes. Just for fun, before we get into the rest of our agents, I want to throw cowork at that. And
prototyping. In production, we want the ability to scale task workers independently. We want prioritization, subtask retrying, ideally memoization, and we also want rate limiting. So in order to not build all of those components out ourselves, we had to rule out the Kubernetes cron. So for all of those reasons, we chose Ingest as our async task worker for this project. As mentioned, the core of this system is the async task.
So a question about IBM. Our strategy, at least over the last several years, has been, to focus on hybrid cloud and AI, because we have fundamentally believed that the world operates within a hybrid infrastructure, and we've come to see that that is how the world is evolving now. Cloud, on-premise, all kinds of stuff. But the important thing is it's not so much about models now, it's more about whether you have an infrastructure that you can deploy and use responsibly, whether you have the right kind of AI with governance where you can trust the outcomes. Third, whether you have data that can be used within those AI use cases and others that actually can deliver meaningful outcomes that can pivot the business in the right direction, and doing all of it at the right kind of cost optimization and sustained ROI. That becomes very, very critical. So I do believe that, so the way we are looking at it is we try to operate across the full stack, starting from infrastructure to the right kind of enablement around models that are more focused around fit for purpose enterprise usage, and having an agentic layer that is able to orchestrate across multiple agents to deliver the right kind of business outcomes. I think, and that's the way we need to think about it.
To see what it was running on, whether it was Windows, Mac, or Linux, and then it phoned home to a command and control server to download a tailored remote access Trojan, or RAT. On Windows, it used a fileless execution loop in PowerShell to stay invisible. On the Mac, it hid in the system cache. Once the RAT was live, the script executed a self-destruct sequence. It deleted the malicious files and replaced the manifest with a clean version, making it look like nothing had ever happened. The goal wasn't just to cause a ruckus, it was to harvest high-value credentials, AWS keys, GitHub tokens, and database passwords. especially from developer workstations and the machines of people running these types of things. Google's threat intelligence.
Anthropic more open than OpenAI. Within minutes of the leak, Xiaofan Xiao, a security researcher, discovered that version 2.1.88 of the Claude Code NPM package was shipped with a 57 megabyte source map file. You know, that file that's only used in development with the full readable source code of your project. This holy grail of leaks containing over 500,000 lines of TypeScript code quickly spread across the internet like wildfire. Anthropic's legal team courageously issued DMCA takedowns, but by the time they woke up in San Francisco, it was already too late. The code was mirrored countless times and cloned by slop tubers like Fireship, which the Supreme Court says I can do legally, by the way, as a world-renowned journalist.
I know a lot about the law and various other lawyerings.
Hey, Happy Friday. This week, Anthropic leaked the source code for their own Claude code. Oops, Artemis 2 and SpaceX heated up the space race, and we got a ton of new April Fool's jokes releases, and they're actually not bad. Welcome to the Friday. Check out. This video was sponsored by Fantic. Okay, for my first story of the week, all of Claude Code's source code has been leaked by the company themselves doing a sloppy release and releasing something called a map file in their NPM registry. Can we call that a vibe release when you vibe code an app and then you accidentally release its entire source code? The leak includes 512,000 lines of code over more than 2,000 files, and importantly, it is not the code for the model itself, but instead for the tools that sit on top of that model, which then tell the model how to behave, as well as the code for the command line interface and all the stuff that you use to actually interact with the model. Anthropic panicked and sent out DMCA.
Gets everything right. All right, so number 6 is about MCP, plugins, and skills being the real extension layer. If you've been following my channel, you know that I've talked a lot about MCP, which is Model Context Protocol, and here's what the source code confirms. MCP isn't just supported by Claude Code, but it's kind of baked into the architecture. Claude Code is both an MCP client and an MCP server. It can connect to external tools through MCP, and other systems can connect to it, but it does go beyond MCP. The source also reveals a skills and plugin layer, meaning power users can build repeatable workflows, custom capabilities, and domain-specific extensions that compound over time. It's not just about connecting to one tool, it's about building an ecosystem around Claude Code that makes it smarter for your specific work. This is where Claude Code stops being just a coding tool, and it starts being an integration layer. You can connect it to databases, APIs, internal tools, documentation systems, anything with an MCP server. And then you can layer skills and plugins on top for the stuff that you do repeatedly. Now, the more systems you connect it to, the more useful it becomes. So the power, of course, isn't the tool itself, it's what you connect to and the workflows that you start to automate and build with it. Okay, number 7, there are features.
That's the default. And it's not just me saying it. You had Jeff Hinton on, Nobel Prize winner, founder of the whole machine learning space. He says the same thing. Benji, dozens of others, top scholars. We had a statement about dangers of AI signed by thousands of scholars, computer scientists. This is basically what we think right now, and we need to make it. So we are running out of historic data. Internet is finite, even the hidden data is finite. So the systems will need to be able to generate new data, either through experiments, through self-play, through additional observations in multi-sensory environments. And at the end, it's, I think, the most important realization that we are creating replacement for humanity as a whole. We will not control it. And if we do make that move, there is no undo button. Well over a decade ago, we kind of did this exercise and we were like, well, those are bad ideas. Don't connect it to internet. Don't open source it. Don't give random users access. Don't trade it private data. And of course, what we see, it's like they read. So we are running out of historic data. Internet is finite, even the hidden data is finite. So the systems will need to be able to generate new data, either through experiments, through self-play, through additional observations in multi-sensory environments. And at the end, it's, I think, the most important realization that we are creating replacement for humanity as a whole. We will not control it. And if we do make that move, there is no undo button. Well over a decade ago, we kind of did this exercise and we were like, well, those...
This is not a conspiracy theory. This is what the companies say they're going to do. Whoever controls the armies of superintelligences will rule the world.
Anthropic sued the Department of War. They sued the whole US government. I think they're going to win that case.
The companies are not on track to solve the alignment problem in time, and even if they were, I don't trust them to actually make AIs with values that are beneficial for all humanity.
I keep waiting for you to be wrong.
AI State of the Union. You've written about this November Inflection.
Yes.
So what I'm thinking is we start, just give us like a brief history lesson of just like what happened in November and where are we today? What's possible now?
Well, let's talk about all of 2025 very briefly. 2025 was the year that especially Anthropic and OpenAI realized that code is the application, like being able having these things generate code. I think partly because Anthropic came up with Claude Code back in sort of February of 2025, and it took off like crazy. And a bunch of people started signing up for $200 a month accounts. And so suddenly, wow, it turns out people are willing to pay a lot of money for this stuff for that specific field. Both Anthropic and OpenAI spent the whole of 2025 focusing all of their training efforts on coding. If you look at what they were doing, it was all the reinforcement learning stuff, the reasoning trick, the thing where the models say they're thinking. That was new in late 2024. Like OpenAI's O1 was the first model to exhibit that. And now all of the models do it. So that was the other big trend of last year, was these reasoning models. Turns out reasoning is great for code. It can reason through code and figure out the root of bugs and all of that. And so the end result of this, the end result of these two labs throwing everything they had at making their models better at code, is in November, we had what I call the inflection point, where GPT 5.1 and Claude Opus 4.5 came along, and they were both they were incrementally better than the previous models, but in a way that crossed a threshold, where previously, if you had these coding agents, you could get them to write you some code, and most of the time it would mostly work, but you had to pay.
The Chinese company behind TikTok just released what people call the death of Hollywood, Seedance 2.0. And with this model alone, anyone can create a short film that actually looks professional. So today, I'm going to show you what really makes it the best AI video generator and how it destroyed all the popular models like Sora 2, Google VO3, and Kling. Seedance 2.0 is now live on Higgsfield. So if you want to try it yourself and not fall behind this fast-moving technology, I'll leave a link in the description. So let's take a look at the 5 capabilities that completely changed this new AI model: character consistency, realistic physics, and people.
Combining AI with real footage is actually much easier than you might think. As a matter of fact, I'm already doing it right now. In this video, we will explore 5 different techniques that you can use to start mixing AI with real footage. And it's actually a lot more fun than you might think. Here's what we will cover. First, I will show you how to use motion transfer. And second, I will show you how you can relight your shots super easy like this. Next up, we got omni editing, and what this means is that you can use the same clip, but you can put yourself in a different environment with a different background, anything that you can imagine. Then we have technique number 4. You can have a different face
and a different voice, all with the same video inputs.
And last but not least, AI VFX. And this is one of the coolest ways to start mixing AI with real footage. Now, the only thing that you need is recordings of yourself or the footage that you want to use and an AI subscription. For this, I'm using Higgsfield because it has all the tools that I will be needing, including Kling motion transfer and also a voice changer, which is super useful to making it sound realistic. I will leave the link to Higgsfield in the description down below if you want to check it out. Before we get started, let me first explain what we will be using for this.
I tested every major AI video generator in 2026 to find out which one is actually worth your time and money. And honestly, the results surprised me. Some models that everyone is hyping right now aren't as good as you might think. And a few that people sleep on completely blew me away. So for this video, I used the same prompts and images and ran them through 7 of the best AI video models right now. VO 3.1, Kling 3.0, Grok Imagine, Sora 2, Qwen 2.6, Hailuo O2, and Seedance 2.0. And I'll be judging each one based on realism, motion quality, texture detail, and more. Now here's the thing. Testing 7 different models normally means 7 different subscriptions, 7 different platforms, and a lot of wasted time. But I did all of this using one platform called Higgsfield AI. It gives you access to all the best models under one subscription, which makes comparing them way easier and honestly, way cheaper. I'll leave the link in the description below. Now, let's get into it. But before the results, let me quickly show you.
There are 4 steps that go into creating a realistic clone of yourself. Step number 1 is making realistic AI images of yourself. Then for the next step, we will turn those images into videos. Specifically, we're talking about short form content. And then I will also show you how to make good looking cinematic B-roll and also B-roll for ad type videos of yourself. And lastly, I will teach you how you can clone yourself for long form videos for YouTube. We will be using 3 tools for this. For 90% of this video, we will be using Higgsfield to make our images or videos and even for a bit of voice clone. The second tool that we will be using is HeyGen. We will be using that for the long form videos. And lastly, this tool is optional. We can use 11 Labs.
I built an AI agent social media manager system that runs my entire content pipeline with a set of 17 skills. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up the entire whole system for yourself. And I'm going to walk you through 3 real projects where my agent handled everything. Let me just show you. So the first project I gave to my social media agent manager was, hey Claude, can you extract from this podcast, basically this podcast from Lex Fridman with the CEO of Nvidia, can you extract 7 clips out of this video and please grab those clips, throw them to the clip extractor process. And then I told him, hey, can you schedule that across the 7 days of the week? And he posted all of those 7 clips across 3 platforms, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, and TikTok. And this was basically the editing and the
videos for free, but I will also guide you step by step on how to set up a channel with boosted settings to go viral with your first video. And in the end, there's a surprise for everyone. So let's start with the absolute foundation, which is creating a viral channel for a Ghibli style video. Before we dive in, change audio to your desired language. I have already crafted a very well engineered master prompt for setting up your channel. You will not find such a well-crafted master prompt anywhere else. Simply use this master prompt in ChatGPT, and it will generate 10 channel name ideas for your brand new Ghibli channel that trigger 90s nostalgia and perfectly align with this niche. Just select the name you like the most. For me, the 8th channel name looks perfect. So I am simply entering 8 to go to the next step. Then it will generate some taglines for this channel, which you can use for branding. Once you select your desired channel tagline, first of all, it will generate a viral and SEO optimized channel description. Next, it will provide you with SEO optimized channel tags, and then it will generate channel keywords. And most importantly, it will provide you with text to image prompts for generating the profile picture and YouTube channel cover. Before we create the channel and apply the viral settings, let's generate the channel profile picture. To do this, simply copy the profile picture prompt and go to flow.google, our 100% free AI image and video generator. Just click on Create with Flow, then click the next button, then scroll down and click Continue. On a new sign-up, Google Flow will give 150 AI credits, and the best part is that these credits renew daily. Image generation using Google Flow is 100% free and unlimited, but video generation using the VEO 3.1 fast model uses 20 credits per video generation. If you create 10 Google Flow accounts using 10 temporary emails or 10 different Gmail accounts, then you will have 1,500 credits daily, which is more than enough for generating one long Ghibli-style video daily. Next, simply open a new project. Then you will see Nano Banana 2 selected here. Make sure the image option is selected. Next, you need to select a 1:1 aspect ratio for generating the channel profile picture.
Of this from our phone as well. So the beautiful part about this is I was at the gym today and I was managing my claw from my phone. I still call it a claw for some reason, but I was managing my agent from my phone and it was completely managing this desktop over here. In fact, I'll even bring my camera. You can see this one right here is my agent desktop and this one right here is my main desktop as well. So it actually has everything running autonomously and all of my scheduled tasks as well, such as monitoring trading performance, monitoring the other GitHubs and stuff like that I have running, and then actually working on top of that as well. Okay, now as you can see over here, not on top of like organizing files and doing all that great stuff, what we can actually do is we can integrate it directly with APIs as well, right? So if you actually look at this over here, we can integrate Blowfin API to allow it to actually execute all of this data. We can backtest historical market data. We can add WebSockets
right, which is going to allow us to do certain triggers. And obviously we can actually add APIs as well. So this entire agent is going to be managing my Blowfin account as well, okay? Now, how do you set this up? Well, the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go ahead and you're going to need to download Claude over here. You're going to find a link in the description on how to do it and a step-by-step list as well. But if you actually click over here, we'll click Mac OS. And it's going to download Claude in the top left. Then what we do is we double-click that. You can see on my screen over here, I've got a bunch of files, a bit messy. We'll double-click Claude over here. And then what we can do is we can go and download it and install it, okay? Now, while that installs over there to applications, I'm going to show you how we're going to be executing this trading strategy. We're going to be doing this on Blowfin as well. So to sign up to Blowfin, you simply go in the link in the description. You also get a deposit bonus on Blowfin as well. So it's going to give you free money to trade once you deposit, and you can use that extra money to test. Right now, I recommend testing very small, but also exclusively on Blowfin API, is you can actually use demo mode as well. So if you look at the API docs, you'll find it over here. Scroll down to the bottom of the screen, and then you'll see API docs over here. Once you click this, click documents over here, and inside of here, what you want to do, I'm going to show you in a second, but you're going to copy this and you're going to put it inside of your Claude as well. So once you go over to your Claude, you see.
Hi guys, today I will show you an Ethereum arbitrage trading bot that I've created using Anthropic Claude code model. So to explain briefly, the smart contract deploys an automated trading bot that will continuously monitor the ERC20 token mempool through the ETH mainnet network to identify profitable arbitrage opportunities in real time. Once a profitable price discrepancy is detected between different decentralized exchanges, the bot automatically executes some trades to capture the spread before other traders can react. If you like this tutorial, guys, please leave a like and subscribe. And now let's dive into the tutorial. So to kick things off, you can use
seasonality projection and all the rest of it. We're just going to focus on seasonality. And what the seasonality shows us is, look at this, right? So let's just say this is today, okay? Or this is yesterday, say 26th. And this period is how long you want to look forward to into the future. Now, if I just go to here, right? If I narrow this down to say the next couple of weeks, or this couple of week period here even, right? I want to just get in and look at that high probability move. Well, this yellow line represents the seasonality across the last 3 years. So the average movement of price over the last 3 years. Well, what about the last 7 years? Okay, what about the last 15 years? Well, you can see if we bring those on, they all correlate. They all correlate, which means when they all line up, there is an even higher probability of this playing out. And if you look at the correlation of how price is moving right now, 83%, 80%, 81.3%, that's very high. That's a pretty good probability of being right, right? Now, you can, you can use the seasonality to your advantage that way. And you can bring on as many of these or as little of these as possible. It'll even tell you the best correlated year was 2012, right? 85% nearly. So pretty cool, really, really cool. I mean, there's no other tool that I know will give you that.
Investing platform Public.com is rolling out AI agents to help members automate their investment strategies. Joining us with more, Yannick Malling, the CEO of Public.com. Yannick, welcome. This is fascinating. So tell me what this agent can do for me.
Yeah, so today we're rolling out AI agents for investing. And so this is the easiest, safest way to put AI agents to work directly in your portfolio. And the way it works is pretty simple. In the Public app, there's like a tab in the app called Agents. From there, you chat with an AI, and you can set up agents that monitor markets, manage cash, and even execute trades. So for example, I have a bunch of agents now running, one that checks the oil prices every morning and automatically implements protective put options as a hedge if they spike. I have another one that takes cash from my bank account, puts it into my bond portfolio to make sure that I'm always yielding the most. And I even have one that scans for cover.
That most people know is the basic chat version. You type a message, it responds. That's it. And look, even that version is already incredibly useful for market analysis, strategy research, writing trade journals, all of that. But what makes Claude genuinely game-changing for us as traders is what they built on top of that. There are two things I want to walk you through today. The first is Claude Cowork. This is Claude's agentic mode. It doesn't just talk, it actually acts. It can open your apps, read and edit files on your computer, run scheduled tasks, and remember context across sessions. So it knows what you told it yesterday. It knows your trading setup. It works for you in the background while you're doing something else. The second is the 2-bit AI Agent Trade Kit. And this is where it gets really exciting. 2-bit has built a direct integration that connects Claude straight to your exchange account. So your AI agent can check prices, monitor your portfolio, and place real-life trades, all from a simple text prompt. Together, these two things create something
to report to me. But yeah, if you don't have execution software and you have like 6 or 8 strategies, then possibly within 30 minutes a day, you can just take a look if everything is placed automatically and done correctly, and then close your broker platform, go and play golf, and in the evening have dinner, and in the morning before the market opens, take a look, place your orders again. I like to have that part automated as well, because I basically live in 3 different places worldwide. I really like that. It's the lifestyle that I designed, that I always dreamt of. And if then everything is on full automation, that really helps a lot.
Excellent. That's the goal for sure. Perfect. Well, Lawrence, I want to dive deeper into developing a fresh strategy. And by the way, I just want to mention to everybody, Lawrence gave an excellent presentation at our conference breaking down a lot of this process. So we're going to go in a little bit, different direction today, but definitely review that if this is something that really interests you. And it was a great Q&A at the end as well. But Lawrence, first and foremost, I'd love to say, or ask you, where does the inspiration for a new strategy, say you're trying to come up with your 76 strategy currently, where do you look for inspiration? Is it reading about other traders and what they're doing? Is there a hole that you've noticed your current batch of strategies kind of doesn't fill? Where do you typically come up with that first, idea for a new strategy that you might add to your portfolio?
Couple of things. I think the first thing
So Google just released something pretty big. They're calling it TurboQuant. It's a compression algorithm for AI that reduces certain memory requirements by at least 6x and delivers up to an 8x speed increase. But here's the kicker, all with 0 accuracy loss. The 0 accuracy loss, that's the thing that is kind of...
It hits the thing that makes AI possible, which is the most enormous, energy-intensive build-out of infrastructure. Possibly one of the most enormous and energy-intensive build-outs in modern history. I know that might sound like a bit of an over-the-top.
We expect hyperscalers to spend another $1 trillion+ over the next 24 months on AI. But what if all of that is at risk because of a helium gas plant in Qatar? That is what we are talking about. We are in a world where hyperscalers like Google are literally willing to go bankrupt for AI. That's what Sergey Brin has said on the record. As a founder of Google, I would rather go bankrupt than lose the race on AI. I'll spend anything. Hyperscalers are already issuing bonds. There are some that are willing to go negative on free cash flow right now in order to build the data centers they need. But data centers depend on chips. And what we are seeing in this...
This is Bloomberg Tech. Coming up, the NASDAQ 100 falls into correction territory as big tech stocks keep falling, the Iran war rattling investor confidence. Plus, Meta is set to fund the construction of 7 new natural gas-fired energy plants to fuel its Hyperion data center in Louisiana. And Anthropic is said to be looking to IPO as soon as October. This is the AI company wins a court order blocking a Trump ban on government use of its AI tool. Welcome to the program. Happy Friday, but less happy in financial markets where technology stocks have entered correction territory. Look at how the NASDAQ 100 has traded over the last 6 months or so. And you can see that as we kind of got into the beginning of 2026, we've gone from those highs down to a bit of a trough. That's been driven by partly the war in Iran and geopolitics, but also a very deep assessment of AI spending, capital expenditures, and cash flows relating to AI. Case in point and a case study is Microsoft. Microsoft is on track to have its worst quarter since 2008, the worst quarter since the financial crisis, and a big part of that, including the activity we're seeing in this session, is the commitment to AI infrastructure build out, the financing of it, and what's underpinning investor confidence right now. Then there's the news flow in the moment. Shares of Meta are also down in this Friday session, and honestly, they're having a bit of a tough week on track.
Standing here in 2026, the Oppo Find N6 Global Edition has officially landed, and it feels like a turning point. We're talking about a device that is just 4.21 millimeters thin when unfolded. It packs a massive 6,000 milliamp hour battery, and of course it features the 200 megapixel Hasselblad camera system. I've been using the global variant.
Now that I've actually used the Neo and put it through its paces, whether I was editing Final Cut videos or even live streaming off of OBS, something that my iMac Pro from 2017 struggled to do simultaneously, I couldn't believe it. With 8 gigs of unified memory, thanks to Apple's genius swap system with the SSD, and thanks to the impressive single-core performance of the A18 Pro chip, I was able to edit 4K at 60 videos while live streaming, not to mention also capturing my video and audio and masking me out for a members only stream I did last week. The audio quality was quite impressive, and the live stream was able to maintain 30 FPS, which was genuinely impressive and, in my opinion, way above the norm that you would expect of a computer this cheap. I mean, just think about it. Final Cut Pro
in its box, and you'd hope so since it cost around $1,900 US. I mean, it does undercut the competition since it only comes in a single 512 gig variant. And while it is available globally, it's limited to just Asian markets, so no European release this time around, unless you import one, of course. But it is available in Australia and New Zealand, but over there it jumps up to around $2,300. So for that price, is it actually worth it?
Well, is whether people should just save up and get the MacBook Air instead. Now the Air, the new one with M5, starts at $1,099, so $1,099. You're looking at a $500 difference. That's not nothing. That's a lot of money. It's almost double the amount. And yes, the Air is a better laptop. It has an M5 chip with a 10-core CPU instead of the Neo's 6-core A18 Pro, which is an iPhone chip. It has 16 gigs of RAM at minimum that you can configure up to 32 if you need it. It has Thunderbolt ports instead of basic USB-C. The battery lasts about 4 hours longer for web browsing. Has a slightly bigger screen, but like very slightly. It has True Tone, wider color gamut, a backlit keyboard, and Force Touch trackpad. So on specs alone, it clearly wins across the board. There are also cheaper M2, M3, or M4 models that are even refurbished or used at probably a similar price point than what you're getting with the Neo. But I'm looking at what Apple sells on Apple's website. I don't technically like to buy machines that I want to keep for a long time that are used or refurbished. So this is kind of how we're looking at it. If your daily life is email, web browsing, streaming, Google Docs, FaceTime, scrolling social media, the Neo handles all of that, and it can handle more, as we just talked about. But if you don't need more, you're going to be just fine. Save yourself the money. The A18 Pro actually outperforms the M1 chip in single core performance, which is the metric that matters most for everyday stuff anyways. So the real question isn't which laptop is better. It's just whether you personally need the things that an Air or even a MacBook Pro offers that the Neo doesn't. Which, for me, here on paper, it really hasn't been much. If you know...
All right, guys, this was a slaughter, and it was the HP that killed the MacBook Air. Wow, way louder. Everything's brought up. The highs are still nice and clear. This might be the first time I've seen in a long time where a Windows laptop killed Apple's MacBook speakers. The only issue is the reflectivity. This display is insanely reflective, so now that I'm looking at it, even though it's OLED, the blacks don't look super deep black because it's reflecting my gray ceiling tiles. In Ben's side cam, he's reflecting that wall, which is gray, so it looks worse than this display when you're in a bright room due to the reflections. Now the HP's display also goes up to 1100 nits HDR, so I went into the settings, I turned it on, but it does get a lot brighter, as you can see. The only issue is that a lot of the colors start getting washed out. Now I turned off HDR, I dimmed down all the lights. This is where it looks crazy impressive. The OLED looks absolutely amazing. You can see the fully deep blacks, turned off pixels compared to the whole display being gray on the MacBook Air, and the colors on the OLED are popping like crazy. And as for the final nail in the coffin, this is a 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate display compared to the MacBook Air, which is 60 Hz static. This is the 1080p webcam on the HP. You can see I got some blowing out going on here on my white shirt, my forehead too, so it looks overall good, just a little bit overexposed. Let me know how the mic sounds down below. And now here's the webcam on the MacBook Air. It's the 12 megapixel center stage, so it can follow you around. Let me know how this looks and the mic sounds down below. And now let's jump in.
Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and these are the all-new AirPods Max 2. They're $549, the same as before. If we flip it over here, you'll see it says AirPods Max 2, and they come in a few different colors. Midnight that we have here, Starlight, blue, purple, and orange. I have the first generation to compare them with as well, where I had the Lightning version, but I never had the USB-C version. Let's go ahead and open it up. So we'll pull the pull tabs here. Let's flip it over. And you can see on the box here, it actually says Midnight, so it's the Midnight model, and they should be slightly different color than the ones I currently have, as those were space gray. Let's set the AirPods Max 2 aside, see what we get in the box here. So it says AirPods Max, it doesn't say AirPods Max 2, and you'll see it's just a quick start guide going over the buttons. We have quite a few different pamphlets in here, regulatory compliance, before using, and a 1-year warranty. Let's put these away. You'll see in the box we do get a USB-C to USB-C cable. It's not color matched, and we don't have a charger of any sort, but of course we can plug it into our different devices, charge it there. Let's set this aside. We'll package it back up and take a closer look at the AirPods. So let's set that aside. Here's the AirPods Max 2. We've got the sort of silly case, but it does work. So we'll open this up here. So there we are. We'll set that aside. Now, just to compare the colors here, this is Midnight versus black or space gray. So there's a slight hue difference, especially on the AirPods themselves. Again, we'll compare them in a moment. Let's remove them from the case here. So we have the paper cups here. There we are, and these are the AirPods Max 2. They don't look any different. They actually are the exact same weight as the prior version, and if we compare them side by side here, so we'll take AirPods Max 1 out, compare them side by side, you'll see Midnight versus Space Black. So I really like the black color. I don't know why they didn't do that. So the new Midnight AirPods Max 2 sort of match the color of the MacBook Air M5 in Midnight. So that gives you a comparison there compared to the Space Black. Everything else is identical other than the color, all the button placement and everything else. And you can see that here. So all of the buttons are exactly the same. The only difference here at the bottom should be that we now have USB-C compared to Lightning. So again, you could have gotten the previous generation in USB-C as they released those not too long ago, but now we have AirPods Max 2. So there is no silver option.
Description, the cheapest I found this one for is around $1,200. Now, if you want the Chinese version, you can find that for $1,000. And if you want the big boy Leica version, this is going to be around $1,400. Now, I'll show you the differences in a minute. Now, I know what you're going to say. What's the difference between the global version and the Chinese version? There's 3 key differences. Number 1, the Chinese version has a bigger battery, 6,800 milliamps versus 6,000 milliamps with the global version. And 2 downsides. Number 1, you're not going to get the Google AI. Okay, that's not going to be stock. Now, you can sideload it if you want, but no Google AI stock on the device. And number 2, you got to check your 5G bands. Now, depending on which carrier you got, you might not get 5G. Now, me, I live in the USA. I don't have no problems
There's obviously nothing else in the bottom half of the box, but stuck inside the lid, per usual, is the Samsung logo stamped on the outside of the packet of accessories. You still get a SIM ejector tool, a whole bunch of paperwork and instructions that no one has ever read in all of human history, and then the familiar USB-C to USB-C cable for charging. Pretty much the same old unboxing experience for any of Samsung's smartphones nowadays. With all that stuff out of the way, here is the phone once again, and as we peel off the final protective layer and power it on, let's talk pricing and availability. Unfortunately, like I alluded to in the intro, the price for this year's new A57 has gone up. This phone now starts at $549 unlocked directly from Samsung for the base model, 128 gigabytes of storage and 8 gigabytes of RAM. And I have to say something about
be refined later with follow-up prompts. And now let's see what AI Studio builds. And there it is. This is the moment. Look at what it's saying. I need to set up Firebase for your application to handle user authentication and data storage. Please review and accept the Firebase terms in the setup UI that just appeared. Once you've done that, I'll continue building your app. This is exactly what we wanted. AI Studio is detecting that our app needs authentication and a database, and triggering Firebase setup on its own. All we need to do is accept the terms, and everything else happens in the background. Now you can see a pop-up asking to enable Firebase for the database. It's also asking you to select a location to host your app. You can choose any location based on your preference, or just leave it as default. And once you click Enable Firebase, everything gets set up automatically in the background. And within a few minutes, Google AI Studio has completed the Firebase integration automatically and built our app. If you expand the action history, you can see all the steps it performed in the background to set everything up. And this is another major upgrade. Google AI Studio is now powered by the anti-gravity agent, which takes it beyond just prompting into a full-stack app-building environment. It can build production-ready applications directly from natural language prompts. In simple terms, it turns Google AI Studio from a chat box into a complete app-building factory. Look at this! AI Studio has successfully built our secure pass generator app with everything fully integrated. Authentication, database, UI, all done. And if you go through the response, it clearly explains everything it has set up. Firebase authentication with Google Sign-In, Firestore database to store passwords, and even security rules to make sure users can only access their own data. On top of that, it has designed a complete UI, a modern homepage with a live password preview, a dashboard where users can generate secure passwords with different options, and even a cloud vault to save and manage them. All of this generated from a single prompt. Now, let's head over to the Firebase console. And if we refresh this,
should we use what kind of test?
Oh yeah, great question. So while this is running, so PyTest essentially is an automatable version of the ADK eval that we just manually triggered. So of course, if we want to do evaluation, we don't want to have to be running ADK eval each and every time. We want to be able to inject this as part of a CI/CD pipeline. So let's say an evaluation fails, we don't actually deploy that image to a public service, for example. For us to do that, we have to have essentially automatable unit tests, and PyTest is essentially that language in Python. Since we're using Python for our ADK agents, we're going to be using PyTest for our unit testing framework that we're going to define. If you're using Go or Java, some of these other languages that you can create ADK agents with, it would be a different unit test framework. But overall, we're using PyTest because we're building ADK agents with Python. But overall, the main goal is to automate the evaluation so we can then use it for useful reasons later on, such as for within a CI/CD pipeline, to kind of kickstart or block a deployment and so on.
Yeah, let's Continue.
Will usually be vague as well. So that's why understanding how to write a strong prompt is extremely important here. A good prompt is thorough and detailed. It clearly describes what you want to build and includes specific features and functionality that the application should have. It also needs to have a clear structure. Instead of just throwing multiple ideas together in one sentence, good prompts organize the requests into logical sections, define user flows, and establish priorities for what needs to be built. Another important element is context. The prompt should explain the purpose of the application, who the target users are, and what the desired outcome should be. And this helps Base 44 understand not just what to build, but why it is being built. Strong prompts also include technical requirements when necessary, and this might involve specifying things like mobile responsiveness or authentication systems, integrations, or other functionality that the application should support. Finally, a good prompt is actionable. It gives Base 44 clear direction on what to build without leaving room for confusion or interpretation. In simple terms, the more clear, structured, and detailed that your prompt is, well, the more accurate the final result will be. So now that we understand what a good prompt looks like, it's just as important.
This guy has no tech background, never learned to code, runs a business making over $100,000 a month building software for clients. The skill that made it possible, he just describes what he wants in plain English and a tool builds it for him. The tool is called Lovable. I run 3 companies and I consult.
You co-build a film software and you basically just write in a prompt and the AI does all of the rest. Now, the AI doesn't just start building it blindly. It actually asks you questions first, like what kind of users do you need? What data do you want to track? What should different people be able to see and do? Now, that kind of questioning process alone tells you that this is different. It's not just generating something and hoping for the best. It's thinking through the architecture with you. Now, let's get over to the build, okay?
OpenCode is the most popular AA programming tool in recent times. Its biggest advantage is that there is a free model out of the box. With simple configuration, you can also access top programming models such as Gemini 3 Pro Cloud 4.5 Oppos for free. OpenCode can be seen as an open source version of Cloud Code, almost everything Cloud Code does. And it is user-friendly to China. You will encounter a series of troublesome things such as speed limiting and banning in Cloud Code. There are several mainstream models in OpenCode that can be used for free. It is very suitable for beginners to get started. AA programming can be created and played as you like.
AI, where, for example, I was really excited this morning. Mistral released a new coding model. They called it Leanstral. It's a really fast model designed really for coding purposes, for, you know, basically agentic systems that are working with programmers. And you know, it's maybe not the best model for every kind of AI that you might consider. It's not going to draw pictures for you. It's not going to write poems for you, but it is going to help you with coding, and it's going to do that really efficiently. That's exciting. You know, it's exciting to see, you know, that kind of specialization happening. The other thing that I think is really driving this is just the need for efficiency. So Jensen has been talking about the 3 laws of scaling, and yesterday he added a 4th one. I don't know if you guys saw that at the keynote, but there's pre-training. So that's the process by which we take an enormous data set, you know, basically every bit of data that we can find, and we show it to a LLM, tries to memorize everything. Then there's post-training, where we take that knowledge base that's now encoded in a base model LLM, and we put it in different environments and try to teach it how to solve problems and how to work collaboratively with humans. And then, of course, then there's deployment, where when the model is actually being deployed, it has the chance to think. And the longer it can think, the more likely it is that it's going to be able to come up with a solution to the problem that it's working on. And then yesterday, Jensen added a 4th sort of loop around all this, which is agentic systems. You know, so you know, the LLM.
Nonetheless, let's just check out the technique for itself. So it's a 2-pass situation, and it works with like 4 bits and less. They go down to 2 bits, which is amazing if it works. And they use one of the bits to do quantized JL. JL is, I never remember his name, Johnson Lindestrass. They quantize that. That's one of the bits goes there. And the other bits that you give it, either 1 bit, 2 bit, or 3 bits, goes to MSE optimal quantizers. And if you do want to play along, actually, if you go into...
We might have the answer hiding in plain sight. What if we added attention to these residual connections of a very deep AI model? Hence the name of the paper, Attention Residuals. So here's how the Kimi team designed it. It's a lot of math under the hood, but let me explain this to you in simple terms. Instead of just being a conveyor belt where information flows from one end to the other linearly, now for every layer, it can actually reach back and look at any previous layer's output. This prevents the AI from getting confused or forgetting its earlier thoughts as it thinks deeper. Now, to do this, the model uses a system of query, key, and value vectors, or QKV for short, exactly like the attention mechanism of the transformer. Again, if you're not familiar with the transformer, I highly recommend you watch this video first. But anyways, you can think of each layer as having a specific query or question. It's like they're each asking, okay, what do I need from all the previous layers before me? What information am I looking for? And then the key is like a label for each previous layer describing its contents. The key is like each layer raising its hand and saying, all right, here's where I am, here's what I represent. See if your query matches what I have to offer. And then the value is the actual information inside each layer. So how it works is, let's say this is our current layer that's processing data. Well, it could compare its query to every layer's key before it and see how well they match. And if it's a good match, that means that previous layer would have some relevant information for the current layer. And then it would mix in the value of that layer with the output. This brilliant design allows the AI to stay perfectly focused on the most important details, no matter how many steps of thinking it has to do, no matter how many layers the model has. Each layer can selectively choose which layer's information to use instead of just using an incredibly messy cumulative signal. Going back to our chef analogy, now instead of just each chef throwing their ingredients into a massive pot of soup and mixing everything together, with this attention residual method, it's like each layer walks into a buffet. Every previous layer lays out its output in a clean, separate dish. One tray for potatoes, one for carrots, one for tomatoes, and so on. Each layer gets to selectively choose exactly what it needs. Some layers matter a lot, while others get ignored.
Proposed in the past. So we are going to start with a reinforcement learning based prefetching solution, which is going to prefetch data from the main memory to the on-chip caches. So that's one example that I'm going to show. The second example that we are going to show is a perceptron-based off-chip load prediction, which actually sits inside the code and predicts which request is supposed to miss the entire cache hierarchy and would come to DRAM and then would start accessing the DRAM. And how can we embed machine intelligence inside making that prediction? So we are going to look into that. And then the third proposal that we are going to look into is yet another reinforcement learning based coordination policy that manages these two mechanisms together. So these three in general going to be the first part of the lecture, which I'm going to cover, which is depending on the memory system.